Hello and welcome to episode 27 of Lift as We Rise. My name is Roshni Gajjar. Consider the next hour time out for yourselves because you're going to be intrigued and your curiosity is possibly going to be awakened by conversation today. If you need to, do grab that notebook. Today, the conversation takes us into the future, this time to gain a perspective from the inside out. I'll be broaching the topic of purpose-driven strategies and how you and I can take full ownership of our future roadmap to achieve the very best versions of ourselves. My guest today is Tom Meyers, who is an osteopath, a futurist, and the author of two recently published books, one called Futurize Yourself and the other The Future's Effect. Without any further delay, because we've got lots to discuss today, let me introduce you to Tom. Tom, it's an absolute pleasure to be speaking with you today. And as I said earlier, before we got onto the air, I just wish that this could be live in person and in South Africa. Welcome.
It's a pleasure to be here with you because we have a lot to discuss, as you say. And if I get invited to South Africa, then I will definitely come. You're right. You know, it's been there before, traveled about 2 months at one stage, been there when I was working on the QE2, the cruise ship also. So, yeah, and it's not that far away. I'm from Belgium, it's basically one night flight and you arrive at the same time. So, I think it's a place where great opportunities can still emerge and where people can probably benefit from some future thinking.
No, absolutely. And Tom, as I was sharing with you as we were planning for this podcast during 2020, my work certainly took a really interesting direction with a clear focus on the strategy bit, but started to become very influenced by the principles of purpose, the principles of resilience, and how that influenced sustainable business models and high performance, particularly in the space of leadership. In 2020, I just felt that we were at the doorway of a decade that was going to bring about some real big changes. Now, you came to a choice point in your career way back in 1999, and we'll hear more about that during our talk today. I couldn't help but think that here we are in 2023 talking about purpose, resilience, and futures. We've been working on different sides of the continent, you're in Europe, me down in Africa, and looking at these principles from a different lens, you from a healthcare and future side, myself from a finance and consulting side. But think about it, without this technology and the rapid evolution of this technology, we possibly could not have been having this conversation so effortlessly and probably not be able to share it with listeners from all over the world who somehow will pick up this conversation. It's quite mind-blowing.
It is, and there is an advantage of progress and evolution of the digitization of our world. Of course, there are also the side effects, but if we can prepare for them and we can also foresee them and be a bit more into, like for you as a financial analyst, it's also strategic thinking about our lives in a digital world. Because we've seen through to the COVID how fast our lives can change. And also that luckily we had all the digital means still and to have food delivered, to have the whole kind of basic needs come to us, or that we could have access to them during that period. Because imagine that digitization or that kind of that the internet would be down for a while at the same time, then I think we would have been in bigger trouble. Not say that many more people would be affected by that. So now we were lucky to have the digital world to support us. So yeah, there are good things, bad things, and everything in between, I would say. But it's interesting to see how, and I see that in my practice a lot, how the world really has changed the last 3 years, and how this suddenly the COVID period has accelerated like this new world we are living in and are going towards. Suddenly like an accelerator of change, accelerator of automation, digitization, that before was already happening, but now has exploded exponentially within no time. So, yeah, interesting times that we are witnessing.
Yeah, and Tom, I thought to share that because some people are quite excited by the future, like you and I are, and some people are rather daunted by the prospect of thinking about futures. And, if we fast forward to, let's say, 2030, who knows? Tom Myers might be an avatar sitting right here in the studio virtually and giving this presentation. That's one aspect. Or we could be speaking to you from another planet. So things are evolving so rapidly, and it's really curiosity and imagination that I guess gets us to where we need to be, but as you pointed out, in the most responsible manner. And that is why we're having this talk today. So, as you pointed out, a tumultuous few years since 2020, and here we are. People's lives have changed. Some people have lost their livelihoods. Businesses exist or they don't exist. People have come and gone. Tom, your work as an osteopath, as a futurist. Tell us a bit more about that work. Not everyone's familiar with those terms. And what types of trends have you seen coming out in the last 3 years?
Well, not only physically, but also mentally, is my hands and my listening skills, because it's the whole package. Tom comes, Tom listens to what they want to share, but also sometimes we need to dive a little bit deeper into the history of their problems, like going back a couple of months to see from can we trace it back to some specific point, because it helps people also to realize that what they're having is sometimes related to something that they've forgotten, and this relationship is important within the healing process. So you, first of all, some people know, oh, I fell and I've got this and it's normal. But what I'm seeing now more and more is that people in general go to an osteopath with physical complaints, neck, shoulder, back pain, and can you help me? Yes. And then you ask, where does it come from? Well, I just woke up with it. And then when you start asking, and do you have any other problems? Well, 3 to 5 years ago, most of it was no, this is it, I have this problem. And since COVID, since 2020, I'm seeing the change that, oh, yes, I'm not sleeping so well anymore. I have a bit of concentration problems. My digestion is not so very well. Increased headaches, I have also, so it's kind of tingling feelings, sometimes in my upper body, sometimes in my arms, sometimes in my legs. And they're coming with like this, what we call multimodal disorders, like different symptoms, non-related. And often they have already seen their generalist, and they prescribe disease by disease solutions. So, oh, for your headaches, take this medication. For your back, go to the physiotherapist. For your digestive system, maybe you should see this specialist, and so forth. And maybe it's stress related, so go and see a psychologist or a psychiatrist. And often, more often than not, nothing works. And so they do all of these things, doesn't work, and then they come to me and we treat them, and then there is actually a relationship between you all. But we're trying to find out, first of all, from when did it start, and how is your life, and how many changes have you gone through. And then when you start seeing that story, most people have gone through an enormous amount of change in a very short period of time. Lost people through COVID, had to stay home, had kids at home, had to work from home, and their whole system has been in a kind of overcharged, no time to recuperate and regenerate. And from experience and from my interest for 15 years now into the stress response, I've discovered that most of these different symptoms can be related to what's called stress-related dysautonomia. There's a dysfunction of the autonomic nervous system. Basically, the autonomic nervous system is a sympathetic nervous system. Says from stress, okay, I need to fight and flight. The heart rate goes up, blood pressure goes up, muscles tense up, then the digestion goes down, immunity goes down over time. And of course, that needs to be compensated with time to relax, to recuperate and regenerate. But there is not enough time to relax, recuperate, and regenerate anymore. So this system is in disarray. And then one system after the other system starts to cascade over time. And this is what I'm seeing now, that more and more people not only have physical problems, but also this cascade of other problems. And this is worrying me because for the moment, the general medical practitioners don't seem to know what to do with that. And also because there is no medication for it. And there is also no tool or instrument or like a stimulation that can deal with that. And so luckily, I've been specialized in this for 15 years and I can offer a good treatment to my patients. And I started to teach my approach also to physiotherapists and manual therapists to say, hey, you have a role and a job here to do. But it's interesting how this impact of change is underestimated, one, and how this impact of change is only going to get worse because as we can see, even in the last weeks with ChatGPT, how that suddenly is like the new big thing that is going to influence so much in our lives and so fast that we're going to be even more overwhelmed, going through more changes, more change, more stress, more for me. I can only see more health problems rising, and we need to be more prepared for this. So I think from this, what we need to learn, we've learned from the past, and then a lot of thinking about the past and ruminating about the past, and then we came into the mindfulness, more about present thinking, and now we also have to add the future into this and to say, okay, how can I prepare myself better for the changes that are going to come and be a bit more proactive? But this is a general thing also in business. And you must know that, Roshni, in business, more and more futurists are being implemented. More and more we think about, okay, what are the scenarios of the future? Because the future is not known. There are scenarios. Maybe it's this, maybe it's that. And how do we prepare for these scenarios so that we can respond when one or two of them arrive? This is what I see in what is happening in business. We now also need to start applying to ourselves, but then on a human and on a human level, not on the economical level, but in the economy of body, mind, and spirit, and to go forward with a little bit more of an idea of where we're going, or where we want to take ourselves.
Tom, thank you for that overview, and I'm sure it's been a really interesting 3 years. Of course, we're seeing the effects of long COVID, and we're seeing it in the medical aid data or the health insurance data at the moment. The issues around mental health has come to the fore. We've seen burnout, we've seen the great resignation, etc. And as you speak about these principles of overwhelm, as we go into the uncertain, I've seen that in my work around risk management strategy, for example, when you are when many people are presented with something they can't see and they don't understand, that overwhelm goes into a certain level of unprecedented level of experience, and what that results in, I found, is that people start applying that fight or flight mode simply because they can't relate to this new thing that is coming to them. Have you found that?
Yes, that's indeed. If we look into the future, most of it is fueled by angst from what we see on TV. We have the war in Ukraine with Russia. We have, maybe the climate change. Then we have, the Turkey's, the tremblement de terre, as we say, there's the earthquakes, uh, the bad weather in America, and all of this is just fueling our anxiety of where are we going, what is happening to the world, and so we're going to switch it off. And so if we look too much forward, we have not learned to see scenarios, positive scenarios, and we only see the negative, then of course we are not going to look there because it's dangerous. And people, our primal instinct says from we need to survive. And so the stress response is being activated. And that stress response actually changes your time perception. The stress makes you like only focus on the present because the rest is dangerous. So I need to survive today. So the more that you go into a stress response, the less that you're going to think about the future while you actually should think about the future. Because, preparing the future can actually help you to get out of the stress response or pull you out of it. But we need to think about scenarios. And this is also the difference, but that before we were only living by one scenario. And now we have to think about multiple scenarios. Well, to see from this can happen or that can happen and that can happen, and what is the probable future, what is my preferable future, what is my projected future. So, and then to see from, okay, but what do I want the future to be like? Most people don't have never really asked themselves that question. What do you want from life? What are your aspirations? How do you want to feel? If I ask my patients this, then I'm often faced with a blank face, right? It's like, uh, and no sound comes out because people haven't really thought about it. And I think okay, let's start there. How do you want to feel? What do you aspire from life? What do you want to have in life? I want to have a good life. I want to be resilient. I want to evolve as a person. I want to be doing things that are actually actionable, that are actually possible, and I want to have a transcendent future in the sense that I want to have meaning, purpose, and when I die one day, which will happen, I want to say from wow, I made the best of it, and I'm leaving this world a better place for me having been in it. That is my aspiration, my personal aspirations, and I'm trying to implement them into my daily life and make them into an ongoing reality, which luckily, I've been doing this for 23 years now. So luckily, I am there. So, and I think this is the new thing. This is we, the new paradigm shift is that the old paradigms don't work anymore and we're lost. And now we need to think about new paradigms and shift into them to say from, okay, if the old doesn't work, we need new models to live by. And one of the new models is to be more aware of the scenarios of the future, choose one, and start to align yourself with that future that can then pull you forward instead of being pushed by your path forward into the unknown.
So, Tom, that really is a very interesting approach or tool for some types of disease management. And on this principle of purpose, then, you know, success, I find, comes from journeying on a gravel road rather than a smooth trod road. One really doesn't get there from saying, I want to know my purpose and finding it overnight. So it is a medium to long term answer that kind of evolves. Yet people today, I find, think, act, and invest short term. And this, I find, leads to false expectations. And a result of those false expectations, people, and particularly the youth, and this is an area I'm interested in, are becoming more and more disillusioned, and they feel like they've completely lost their direction. And whilst I was preparing for this in tandem to reading your books, I came across quite a pertinent post from a headmaster at one of the well accredited schools in South Africa, in Pretoria, St. Albans College. Their headmaster said in his post this: I asked some 12-year-olds at our scholarship function what advice they would give to their parents if their parents would listen. And some of the answers are profound, and he listed them. The one was, stop being so negative about South Africa, and I guess that could relate to any country. Please separate your work stresses from your home life, and you've alluded to stresses. Thirdly, don't stress so much. Take a break with me, the child. Talk to me more. Listen to what I have to say. You don't have to agree. And the last observation he made was, I know you want the best for me, but remember that I'm not perfect. And these were powerful statements coming out from young minds. And it sounds like adults, Tom, are out of sync with what their true calling is. And I started wondering, when we're thinking about survival versus thriving, is this a construct and the outcome of a third industrial revolution in which we felt that it was normal for someone else to dictate to us how best to manage our time, i.e., work hard rather than work smart? So your story is certainly a demonstration of someone who's gone through tremendous trauma and challenges before you discovered your purpose. Tell me, Tom, in your mind, having reached the other side now, the proverbial end of the dark tunnel, what role does purpose play in one's life and in one's business?
It's the leading role, I would say. It gives me motivation to do what I do, and also, even though that I'm on the other side, it doesn't mean that's easy. But because of purpose and of giving that purpose a direction, is of course that is something where I can always fall back upon to. And what most people lack is something to fall back upon to because they don't know themselves. But there is one thing about purpose that most people doesn't seem to understand is that purpose doesn't come to you. People, I often hear them say, I haven't, I haven't found my purpose. And I ask them, have you looked for it? And then it's like, no, so you're waiting for it to come to you. And then they start thinking as if you don't really know what to say in answer to that. They say, what about giving your life a purpose? Can you do that? Yeah, of course you can. But what if it's wrong? Well, maybe you start first of discovering the building blocks of purpose. And what are the building blocks? Well, what's your potential? What are you born with? Do you think really that the potential you're born with, that does not relate to your purpose? It would be very illogical to me if your purpose was not within the domain of your potential. So find your potential. Find out, how you want to feel, what your aspirations are, and your purpose, so you can realize that. And with that, you can create a story that you then can project forward. I want to give my personal example because, if we start too much into the conceptual, it's sometimes difficult. So when I was 29, I was running a small delicatessen shop selling charcuterie and cheese. I was very unhappy. I actually had suicidal thoughts until somebody said, "From Tom, you need help." And I thought, from me, help? No, 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 I'm not sick. But I did get help. And that lady gave me helped me to see my past from a new perspective. But what she did, she helped me through questions to find my potential. And that is what I've written down that story in my first book, Futurize Yourself, Design Your Life on Purpose. And so my potential that I discovered was that I was a therapist, a communicator, a teacher, a researcher, and a traveler in me. So I was selling charcuterie and cheese. What was I doing there? If my potential was being a therapist and a communicator and a teacher, right? So I was not feeling in my element. Yes, I was not feeling in my element because I was not doing the things in which I was able to be in my element. And so that was already a revelation that from, wow, there is a therapist in me. It's like it was logically constructed through the questions that I received. Um, and then with another question, everything changed. And so she said to me, Tom, imagine your ideal day in 10 years' time. And I thought that was a really strange question. I was suicidal, depressive, my business was failing, I was failing. Thinking about my future, this is the last thing I thought I needed to do. I had problems today and I needed to look after them. I needed to survive. But I was lucky enough, scared enough of this lady because she was quite impressive. She was quite, she had this look and fierceness, and she was grilling me all the time. And yeah, I said, I better do my homework because otherwise she will proverbially slap me. And I came up with a story, and I thought, let's put this potential into a future image, a scenario of the future that we call that now. I didn't even know that that existed, right then. So she asked me where I wanted to be in 10 years' time. So what was my ideal day in 10 years' time? And I really thought that was the most ridiculous question she had asked me so far because I had problems in that moment. My business was failing, I was failing, I had things to solve and sort out. And, I didn't want to think about 10 years' time, it was too far away. But luckily, uh, I was actually quite impressed by the person and a little bit scared that she would give me another proverbial slap in the face, which she had done during the previous consultations. And so I say, I better sit down and write this something about my ideal future. And then the process started to thinking about, okay, if I have potential, if I have been born with that, wouldn't it be logical if I put it into practice that I was and put it into life, that life would make more sense. At least make it more sense. It had no sense at that time. And if I'm born with potential, put it into action, I think maybe it would be, life would be better than it is now. So I created a story that I reduced to a phrase, and I said okay, I'm a therapist. I've developed my own approach. So that was research. I've written a book about it. That's communication. And I'm asked around the world to give presentations and workshops. So that was that part of teaching and the traveler in me expressed. And so I went back with that story to her, and I said, okay, what are you waiting for? Okay, go for it. And okay, and today, so we are 23 years later, that is indeed my life. And so coming back to the question of purpose, and I started to see over time that what I had done was given my life a purpose based on my potential, and that it had worked for me, and that was guiding me and organizing me and developing me all the time. And so it has become, the key of my success is a big word, of my contentment and fulfillment. I rather call it. I feel content. I feel fulfilled. I feel healthy within myself, in body, mind, and spirit. And I think that is the greatest experience of all. That to have this kind of constant feeling from, wow, I'm actually quite doing well. I love getting up in the morning. I love what I do. And it's every day like that. And yes, I have bad days. No, yeah. But I also know that there are momentary moments, and most of the time, bad days are there for me to reflect from, okay, is there something that is disturbing your peace? What can you do about it? I use these moments to just sometimes say from, okay, time out, Tom. Sometimes I use them to reflect on, okay, there is something that I obviously need to improve on. But I only can do that now because the basics have been laid, the building stones have been laid, and the vision is very clear and confirmed time and time again. As you said, my books, they are very inspirational. Well, because that is also a confirmation for me. Tom, you did a great job. And I say thank you, Roshni, for saying so. Thank you for again confirming that I'm on the right path.
And that's the trick, right? You never really know with certainty, and hence it is a journey of trial and error. And what I find is to really believe in what you intrinsically know is your truth, and having the courage to follow that. Is that what you found, Tom?
Yes, and you need to do the homework. You have to do the homework of knowing who you are. For some people it's obvious, but for others like me, it was not obvious. And I needed to do the homework to find out from, okay, who am I? What I stand for? What am I born with? What do I want life to be? What are my aspirations? All of that I needed to clarify, conceptualize, because maybe it's just the way I am. Is I'm a logic thinker. I'm quite Cartesian, 2 feet on the ground, and maybe I just needed that structure. Some people don't need structure, but I needed it, and it has helped me ever since. And I can look back at 23 years of it, and so it's not like a certain new idea. No, I've been living like this with the structure, with a kind of vision, and what I call a DNA of my future. So that what does not alter for the last 23 years. So it's and the rest of my life is going to be guided by that and organized by that.
So, Tom, you identify your purpose, and the next big step is to activate it and put it into motion. So, one of the questions in your book asks one to reflect on, what do you admire in other people? And I gave this question some thought. And for me, I certainly have huge admiration for entrepreneurs, leaders, and athletes who have the courage to follow their vision, their passion, their dreams, to become the best versions of themselves so that they can achieve something extraordinary. But I'm very mindful that this journey can be lonely. And once you reach the top, it might get even lonelier, because purpose demands sacrifice, it demands commitment, and it demands a tremendous amount of courage. So you alluded to this in responding to the last question. Tom, what does success mean to you, and what have you found? Have you found a definition of success through your work?
Yes. Um, Let me just pick out one word you said: sacrifice. Is it really a sacrifice? Because sacrifice, it has a very negative connotation, I think. It's not a sacrifice. It's something you just feel you need to do, and something um, that helps you forward, even though that it can be against the stream, yes, that it can be difficult, yes, but it's something that some things you need to give up to have it better afterwards and immediately afterwards. So it's not about we see too much that kind of the choices we make as a sacrifice. And we need to change the vocabulary for that. I don't really feel it's been a sacrifice. It has been something, just changing and making better choices, better decisions with focus and with with a clear vision of where I wanted to take myself. So I just want to clarify that a little bit because the more, if we're going to see everything as a sacrifice, then of course people feel it as a negative and it's going to create a stress response and anxiety. And it's like, from no, we don't have to see it as a sacrifice. We just see it as an investment towards a better future. Success for me is, as I said it before, that kind of feeling of being content, fulfilled, and healthy is one of the feelings with which I can quantify success. But if you look at it from a bigger perspective, it's like to flourish and thrive in a fast changing world. If you can do that, then you have success. And so flourishing is in body, mind, and spirit. It's more like the health and well being side, and thriving is the economical side. If you can be healthy and when you feel good and you can thrive economically, have the means to do what you uh, need, and because it's about fulfilling your basic needs first of all, and then to step that up a little bit to also to live comfortably, and that you can have a meaningful life. I think success is there, right? It's not about the millions on the bank account. It doesn't make you more successful. And it's the part of success in flourishing and thriving is the contributing to other people. We are here on this planet all together, right? If you look it from above, from space station, you look it down and you see, it's very small in the bigger scheme of things, and we're all on it together on one world. We also have seen how with COVID-19, how we impact each other. Some behaviors somewhere in the world, somebody woke up, did something that they thought was normal for them, and it has changed the world. So everybody is connected, interconnected, is far more one than we can imagine. And COVID-19 has, for me, made it very clear how interconnected we are, how one day I can wake up and by doing something can change the world. I, of course, hope that when I wake up and I do something, that it improves the world and that it may help other people, but I'm very aware of that. So success is also how much am I contributing for making this world a better place to live in, not only for myself, for my environment, for people around the world, and the next generation.
Yeah, Tom, you make some really, really interesting points here. And I think what you're talking about is principles that I think in strategy terms we call the relevance of your work, the legacy that you're trying to build as a leader, as a business model, and how do you know that whatever you are investing your effort and time in, and this vision that you are pursuing is relevant, is meaningful, has a positive impact, and one that's going to last beyond your time in the CEO's chair or beyond your role as a parent or as a teacher or as an educator? How do you really plant those seeds that have the potential to grow timelessly across time spans? Um, Really interesting, Tom. So you mentioned the volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous world that we live in. And once upon a time, that was certainly a concept that we spoke about in kind of business slash risk management terms. But in the last 3 years, we've really experienced what that means. So in this type of disrupted, turbulent environment, Tom, what are the factors, behaviors, actions that supports one becoming a successful human being?
Well, I've mentioned a little bit before, it's like foresight and proaction. You know, at this moment, we are far too reactive. Something happens and we react to it. But of course, that's a stress response. Now we have to start more looking forward because we can, right? Also, with the digital environments that we have, we can start seeing a little bit ahead and see from what is coming, what are the developments, what are they working on, and how is this going to impact me? On a job level, I propose that people go to replaced by robot.info, I believe it is, and look up the percentage that their current job is going to be automated or robotized or not. Yes. And today we have the opportunity to look into that and have a figure onto it. And they will say for a taxi driver in most part of the world, say from that 100% that it is going to be automated. So wouldn't it then be logical that if you know that your job is going to be automated between this 5 to 10 years time, and you still have a future career of 20 years to go before retirement, that you start thinking about, okay, when that happens, what am I going to do? And now you start to learn maybe a new profession uh, based on your potential. I would always start with that before you start just shooting in the wild for new jobs, and that you start preparing yourself towards the new conditions and new environments that are going to be or that are being projected, because that will make that when it happens that you're prepared and probably have changed before it happens. And why is that important? It's important for you, for your health and well-being. But imagine that in 10 years' time, you have your kids going to university. That costs a lot of money. That's not the time that you want to be unemployed and have no money, because that will impact your kids' future. So this is what it's the new world, the new paradigm is: start looking ahead. Start looking ahead and create yourself scenarios and see from, okay, if this happens, what can I do? If that happens, what can I do? And then start living towards implementing the changes and the lessons you need to learn to make it into an ongoing reality, to make it that you are ready for the changes to come through your proaction, instead of just being reactive all the time or waiting for somebody else to do it for you. This is the worst thing you can do. All right, I saw this documentary. There was an American who already had lost his job due to automation, became uh, a taxi driver, and he said himself, but now there's already automated trucks driving around. So one day, probably I will lose this job as well. But I hope that the government will do something about it so that I will, still have a job in the future. And I was thinking so he lost his job already. Now he's in a job that he knows, he's aware that is probably going to be automated, and he is not doing something about it. He's saying I hope the government, so not taking the responsibility for his life, but he's waiting for the government to do something about it. I thought I was so irresponsible. And it's not on the government to do something about it. It's up to you. And there we need to be very clear with people that your life, you need to take control over that, because you can steer it. If you are waiting for others, then you also have to accept what you're going to get, and it might not be in your best interest. It will be in theirs. So it's a choice we all have. I know what I have chosen, and I'm very glad about it, that I've taken my life in my own hands.
So, Tom, when we think about VUCA, we think of massive uncertainty, and you use the word choice a couple of times. And in strategy, you reach choice points where you absolutely have to make a decision. And earlier, you spoke about the principles of focus and clarity, and that means having boundaries clear enough to say, yes, I'm progressing with that, or no, that's going to be taking me off my path. So, when we're thinking of the intergenerational kind of landscape that we're working with now, I'm seeing more and more youth, and we've seen it in the last 18 months, I think, where we saw the great resignation, where people saying, absolutely not, unless, two things: either I'm not prepared to work under these conditions, or I need a lot more meaning in my life. I'm going in search of it, even though the uncertainty is great. And we're seeing that happen. On the other side, you speak about the scenarios, those nearing retirement age, those who are near retirement and still are looking after their children for whatever reason. Yuval Harari speaks about this principle of Homo Deus, this kind of immortal human being who can transcend the 100-year barrier. Um, when we think about scenarios in that age cohort, it's also about probably giving very clear thought around, if I'm going to live to 120, can I be doing the same thing all my life? Or at different phases of my life, do I need something different as I evolve as a human being? What are your thoughts on that, and what have you seen in your practice?
My idea on that is, and again, I'm coming back to my DNA of the future. My DNA of the future has three parts. One strand is, how do I want to feel? I want to feel content, fulfilled, and healthy. What are my aspirations? I want to have a good future, i.e., life, resilient, evolvable, actionable, and transcendent. And my potential is being a therapist, a teacher, a communicator, a researcher, and a traveler. This is my DNA. This is what does not alter, not today, not tomorrow. And am I 80? It will still be there. This is, the non-changeables of me that I've been able to define, right? But the great thing is that my DNA for my future can be expressed in different ways. Yeah, it's just like DNA. Okay? So we have the expression of the DNA, and you have something called epigenetics. Epigenetics says the environmental stimuli will have an impact how the DNA is expressed. And that is exactly what's happening here, right? So if I'm 80, expressing my DNA for my future, it will probably not be being an osteopath, but my therapy will be probably expressed as listening to my fellow residents in the retirement home, or maybe the nurses. The nurses and these people will find me because I am the therapist and I exude that. And they will come for their little talks, and I will be there listening to them. This is the way I will express my therapy. Will I be still able to communicate? I hope so, but we don't know what the communication tools will be of that time period. But maybe it might still be writing in some ways, or maybe it might be voice ways. I don't know. My brain will still start to conceptualize things and do research, even though that I maybe not be able to read properly or something like that, my brain will still be active. So I will just express it, what I'm doing today, but in another way. And that's why finding your potential is, and to create archetypal words from it. And so therapy, well, which therapy? Today it's an osteopath, but there are so many therapies. And therapy can also be listening to people. You see, so this is the key to a stable structure for your future. Find these key elements that make up you of your, again, how do you want to feel, your aspiration, your potential, because this does not change, but can be expressed in different ways over time. The world changes, you can say from, okay, how can I express this DNA in this environment? And if the environment changes again, how can I express it in this way? So you'll always have something to fall back upon to, and this reduces the anxiety for the future because you know you have a structure that you can fall back upon to. It's very evolutive. So it's part of what I call evolopsis, evolving on purpose. And also a new word that I created this week or put down is stasis. So you have homeostasis, you have allostasis, and you have now eustasis. Is finding that kind of stability through change in a fast changing environment. And eustasis means the point between ebb and flow, for example. Okay, so that balance point between stress and relaxation is E, so that's an eustatic place. And to find your that center point from which you can evolve and face the challenges that we will be faced with.
Absolutely, Tom. And I think that's the crux of having a purpose driven mission statement or vision or strategy, so that that is what anchors you. And the how, I think what you're showing is the how you adapt to what comes at you, but you remain anchored in the what you're trying to progress.
Yeah, and it's not the why. The why is part of it, but the first, you know,
Yeah.
again, there's some philosophy, and then they say from, find your why. Yes, but I'd say from maybe what first, and then why, not why first.
Okay.
What do you want? What do you want to feel? What do you want? What are your aspirations? And then add a why to it, the meaning and the purpose on.
Tom, so now you've identified your future, you've activated it, and now it's about ensuring that that purpose is relevant and future proof. Now, in doing all that, there's something that struck me in your book. In your first book, you spoke about how you honestly believe that your strength did not lie in managing people, so you made some career changes. In your second book, Futures Effect, you share a really interesting story about some feedback you received from an associate. And please allow me to read a short extract from that particular chapter. The associate said, "Well, Tom, I can't really explain, but there is something about your presence, your calm, the way you stood and spoke to help resolve the situation that at one stage he thought you were in charge. But he said, I knew you weren't. It was just a very strange experience, and I wanted to share that with you," he said. And you had received a similar comment that week, days later, and you go on to say that I truly believed that there wasn't an ounce of leadership potential in me, but being praised twice in a couple of days, that intrigued me, you say. Instead of downplaying what they said, I thanked them both. My immediate question in my mind was, is this imposter syndrome, or in your words, limiting beliefs? Now, if that wasn't validation enough, the author of the international best-selling book, Mass Influence: The Habits of Highly Influential, Teresa de Grosbois. She says, Tom Meyers focuses in on one of your biggest barriers, overcoming your own self sabotage and stepping into leadership, in stepping into life, the life that you dreamed in which you would make a difference in this world. That's a powerful feedback to receive from someone that influential. Tom, once you identified your potential, your purpose, how best can people manage this transition from their current identity to this new future identity, which is potentially far bigger than they ever imagined themselves to be?
Yeah. So again, the phrase for me was, I'm a therapist who has developed his own approach, has written a book about it, and asked around the world to give presentations and workshops. So there was no specifications at all. And it was put 10 years from the date that I wrote it, right? So one needs to put it far out of in the future where you think, so out of the zone where you think it's not possible to achieve, right? And it's far out, so it must be 5 to 10 years ahead. And then once you focus that, what happens is that you get on a daily or a weekly or monthly basis, you get some people say from, hey, Tom, can you help me with this? Or would you like to do this? And then you suddenly start seeing from, hey, but this one is taking me away from that purpose, and the other one is taking me towards that purpose. And maybe things from your past are from, oh, that's interesting. This is an opportunity, and I've had already some experience with it. So let's discover this opportunity and see what it will bring, and then explore it a little further. And this is how I went forward. And I've not done everything all at once, right? The book only came 14 years later, not within the 10 years time. And because I've learned that this is the 10-year time is not the time. It is, it gives you that motivation and it gives you that direction. And if it takes longer, so what? It doesn't matter. So I believe that then the future starts pulling you forward. And then you start using the phrase, the image of the future that is more generalized to make better decisions, choices, and actions. And it didn't happen in the first month. It happened sometime, in the first 2 months, I got my first step. Because the pharmacist who had actually said to me to seek help, she said to me, Tom, there is this workshop from kinesiology, don't you want to join me? When I saw this lady talk, I said, that's the therapy. That's what I can do. I don't need to be a doctor for that. I can start this workshop in the next couple of weeks. And then this lady, I entered the workshop, and then on the first day, she said to me, Tom, have you done this before? And I said, from never. And I don't even have anybody in my family who is in therapy. So I had no background. And she said, but it seems so easy for you. I said, yes, it is. And so I was confirmed that this was a path. And then she said, oh, but if you do this, maybe you should do that. And then you're stepping on that kind of onto that path that just is a path of discovery. And yes, you sometimes make a mistake, and then you feel that there is something wrong, and then you can readjust yourself. And this is the way you go forward, Roshni. It's still not clear, and you're still not sure, but there are feelings that emerge. There are moments of flow that emerge, and they think but this is it. Yes. Flow, that kind of experience of timelessness, of where you really feel in your element again. And remember, I was suicidal, depressive. My business was failing, and I suddenly had these pockets of flow when I was doing these workshops. And it was the most extraordinary experience and very therapeutic, because it gave me hope again. It gave me also an insight that I was good at something. I was considered good for nothing. I had started to believe it, right? Because with a failing business, I had proven once again that I was a failure. And suddenly I saw from, hey, but here is somebody saying to me, it seems to be you're quite talented for this. And I thought from, wow, that is quite amazing. I can actually be good in something.
Yeah, Tom, and these are really nuggets. It's nuggets that you're sharing because over the past 3 years, I've certainly seen, many business owners, entrepreneurs, young people, kind of feel like they've really lost their way and therefore losing confidence because you're talking about that feeling of fulfillment as a mark of success. But often in our day to day lives, we look for that sense of achievement, that tangible, hard result that proves that we've done things right. And recently that hasn't been there. And when I use the analogy of recently, it's talking about when things are uncertain. And that is a characteristic of the future that it doesn't give you much kind of something to hold on to. You're making it up as you go along. And just listening to you, it emphasizes the importance of finding mentors along the way who can really just give you the encouragement and who see your vision and your potential and keep you moving forward.
One of the things is asking for help, right? And also when the going gets tough, but you're seeing, but this is what I need to do. Let's say an osteopathy exam is really hard, right? And it was a lot of work, and because I had no background, so the studying was enormous. And I thought from, okay, but I'm not going to quit now, is it? It's not because the going gets tough that I should quit. No, it's because I want to be an osteopath. If I want to be that therapist osteopath, then this is what is needed to be done. But because I knew what I wanted my future to be like, I recognized that the difficulty I was experiencing was a little bit too big for me alone to handle. So I got help. Yes, I got a acupuncturist, I got a homeopath, I got talk to people, and that gave me the strength to traverse that kind of really challenging period. And now I'm doing exactly the same thing. If I feel, okay, I've reached here like a barrier, who can I implement of my network that can help me just to, calm down, to relax me, or to support me for a short period of time by talking to them, or by some other means of natural health, from a natural health practitioner, to just support me for that short period of time so I can realize that dream or that kind of challenge that I have. And this is important for everybody, that we are not alone on this world. And we don't have to do it all on our own, right? Your body has a trillions of cells working together, right? And they have your cells in every part of your body has a support system from around it and also from further away through the immune system, right? We are similarly organized, and we need to use people, not use it, but we need to ask for help before we need it. That's maybe a big word, but not leaving it too late, because we are there for each other.
Absolutely. And everybody brings their own strength to the table. And most importantly, on the principle of diversity and inclusion, it's about inviting different perspectives so that the sum of the parts lands up really helping you go down this uncertain journey.
If I may, I want to add one more thing about mentors.
Please do.
If somebody comes to you and wants to help you, don't say no. Say thank you. Yes, because or when you get a compliment of somebody, say thank you. Oh, don't say, oh, it's nothing. You're devaluing that person's honest message towards you. And this is a message towards you. And it's just, you need to accept it. It's really hard for some people to say, just say, thank you, that's very kind of you to say so. I really appreciate that. Instead of, oh, it was nothing. What would you prefer, Roshni, that you gave somebody a compliment? Would you like to hear, oh, it was nothing? Or would you like to hear, thank you, that was very kind. I really appreciate that from you, Roshni, that you earlier on told me how much you appreciated my books and that you found them so inspirational. I really appreciated that. Thank you. I know what I prefer.
I think you make a really important point that sometimes it's ourselves that underplay our self-worth. And that narrative needs to change from the inside out. Thank you for that, Tom. So one of the
Yes.
futurists that remains relevant and probably even more so relevant today is Nikola Tesla. And he said that the scientists of today, in his time, think deeply instead of clearly. One must be sane to think clearly, but one can think deeply and be quite insane. Now, this was a profound statement because in our current times, science has almost become the new religion, and sometimes you can't debate science. And yet, what we're talking about today, this principle of purpose, and for those who've wondered, gee, we are digressing from a very business like discussion, but you've got to apply some philosophical principles to this question of purpose. And when we get into the workspace or live our day to day lives, like I said, we look for those hard goals, the hard outputs. Tom, what role can companies, um, bosses, educators, mentors, parents, what role can they play in helping individuals, high potential young people, to really work and pursue their purpose?
A business wants to have the best from the people because giving or creating an environment for people to flourish, then business will thrive and then people will flourish and thrive. And the business will flourish as well. And so it's this interrelationship between flourish and thriving of a business depends on the flourishing and thriving of the people and vice versa. And so you create this culture that is self-supporting itself and that with both aspects of the future. And so thinking about, okay, where do you want to be as a future where do you want to be as a business in the future, and where do you want to be yourself as a person in the future, and see how we can match these two together and work together towards a better world. That's a world within the ecology of the business, and that's within a cultural environment, in a country, in a world.
Thanks, Tom. And you put out something quite pertinent, and that is in order to help someone else activate and pursue their purpose, you've got to be doing the same for yourself. So it's almost this beautiful evolving journey where you're giving and receiving, paying back, paying forward, so that that whole ecosystem can move forward together. And to your principle of being a good ancestor and building those legacies, one day when you look back to your career, to your life, when you're at the end of it, to ask yourself, hey, how many leaders have I created? How many lights have I lit around this earth? And that should be, as you say, that feeling of fulfillment, whether you do that in an individual capacity or through your business models. It's equally relevant. So thanks for that, Tom. So we are reaching the end of this conversation. And as a South African, it brought me great joy when you mentioned Nelson Mandela. And I'll read what you said in that chapter. You said, I saw Nelson Mandela when I was working as a sommelier on the cruise ship QE2. And what I remember most is his smile, a smile that came from deep within, just like his unshakable belief in the equality of all people and his determination to overthrow the system of apartheid in South Africa. Tom, what struck you most when you saw him? And And how did that aura, I guess, that Mandela exuded, demonstrate your principles of resetting? And we haven't spoken about that. And this acronym that you've coined, GREAT, GREAT. Do you want to quickly take us through those acronyms and not give away too much that's in the book?
Well, the acronym GREAT, we've already spoken about, a great future, because it's the acronym of good, resilient, evolvable, actionable, and transcendent. Right? So, the 5 chapters of my book, and it was just, wonderful to see coincidence that it's so matched. And reset means the return to ease. The reset approach is something I developed as an osteopath and now teaching around the world. And people can find information about that on the resetapproach.com. But what I had read Nelson Mandela's book. I can't remember, was it before or after, but I think it was before I saw him enter the QE2, where he, was part of 3 days journey for a children's fund that he supported, that was being organized on the ship. And I thought, for me, this is way before my own transformation process, right? This was in 1998, I believe, when I saw him. And afterwards, you really think about this man, what he's gone through, and with his belief and with his vision, he made the impossible possible. And I think it's the strength that he exudes, the kind of strong belief. And when the opportunity was there, that he um, you know, that he took up that opportunity to make a difference. And I think that is the lesson. When an opportunity is given to you, or and sometimes you need to create the opportunities, right? And because he, of course, created the opportunity, and then when the opportunity came, he took it. Well, maybe that is what we all have the power to do, the power to create opportunities, and the power to grab it and to take it somewhere when the time is right.
Thanks, Tom, for sharing that anecdote. As I said, as a South African, when we read that name, it brings us huge pride. Um, my final question today for you, Tom, and there's just so much that we could unpack in the principles that are contained in your books, but we don't have enough time. My final question to you is this: what would Tom today say to his 7 or 18-year-old self?
And that's a very, I'm very silent because there's a question that I'm looking a bit, to the whole process. And I think at that time, I really needed to know, take your time. Because at 18, and I call myself a late bloomer, right? At 18, I was not really ready for the world, as for starting to work and things like that. So I was still maturing, and I think I just needed the comfort and to say, from all is okay, Tom. You are okay. You might be different than everybody else, but it's okay. Being different, thinking differently than others, then witnessing that you are, yeah, that you're somewhere on another um, path than the general person, or what we imagine the general person is like. You're obviously not walking on that same path than those people, but it's okay. You have yours, and you will find your way. And I think just about supporting that 18-year-old and younger child, and saying, from it's not because you're different that it means that it's bad. Everybody is unique. Everybody has their paths. And it's because you see it only from your point of view. But once you start learning to look at it from a different perspective, you will see it's all normal. It's okay. So I think I needed that, probably that support, that kind of, yeah, reassurance, to giving reassurance to my 18-year-old, saying, from you know, you will get there. Just take a deep breath, path by path, talk about it to somebody, and yeah, believe in yourself. But again, I think it's about start to learn who you are. What do you vibrate for? What do you live for? Get to know yourself.
Tom, thank you so much. So I must share with you, and I don't know if you're aware, that one of Mandela's favorite poems, Invictus, contains the word, I'm the captain of my fate, I'm the master of my soul. That poem's called Invictus, and you can find it. And interestingly, I found one of the feedbacks that you receive quote that line quite beautifully, but it didn't quite link to Mandela. So thank you for sharing those thoughts. I think there's something quite special when people who are comfortable speaking about the future connect like we did today. So Tom, thank you very, very much for taking time out of your diary to share your insights and some snippets from your principles with our listeners today. It's been an absolute inspiration.
Thank you very much. It was, the conversation flowed. So great host. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom, as you've taught me to say now. I try and learn. Listeners, I hope that whenever you are listening to this podcast, that it's lifted you from our day-to-day lives, the news feeds, the self-limiting beliefs. And whether it's now or sometime in the future beyond 2023, if this sparked something in you and it inspires you to go and chase those wild, impossible goals, please leave us a comment. Let us know how this shifted your thinking, your perspectives in your own lives, in your leadership journey, in your business strategies. Um, Tom, where could people find more information on your work, your books, and your insights?
Yeah, you can find it on futurizeyourself.com. Of course, please link with me on LinkedIn, Tom Meyers, that's, you will easily find me on there. And yeah, I think, I've got many websites, but Futurize Yourself, that's where the book and where you find all the details necessary to continue the conversation that we are having today, for example. Leave some comments, leave some reflections via email that you will find also on the website. So I love to hear from people. And if somebody wants to invite me to South Africa, then of course I'm all ears, to give a presentation, a talk, a workshop. Could be for physiotherapists in the reset approach, or could be about futures thinking, or a combination of two. This is what I do, and this is what I love doing.
Well, we'll welcome guests to South Africa, so we'll have to see how we can make that work for you and for a lot of our other speakers. Tom, thanks very much. So, listeners, this podcast is shared freely, and your support really does matter. So, if you found something valuable, please like it, please share it with those who you think will find benefit from it, and be sure to subscribe to the channel so that you can stay posted. It costs you a few minutes, but it means a lot to keep us on this path. To share these purpose driven conversations. So until the next episode, remember to continue lifting as you rise so that together and with purpose we can thrive. Thanks so much for your time. Bye bye.